Okay, everybody, it looks like we should be good to get started. My name's Ellis Norman. I am the VP of Enterprise Sales and Partnerships with Hacker Earth. We've got an all-star panel joining us today for staying ahead of the curve with enterprise hackathons. So just a little bit of background on Hacker Earth. Hacker Earth is probably one of the top providers of virtual and on-site hackathons in the world. We have an internal community as well as an external community, and long story short, provide hackathons as a managed service to some of the greatest companies that are out there. Joined by an all-star panel, which I'll let everybody introduce themselves. I'll pull up a slide real quick and we'll get started. All right, so here we are again, Hacker Earth, staying ahead of the curve with enterprise hackathons, being joined by a great group from all over the board. So let's start with you, Netta, a little bit of background, and we'll start with a round of introductions. From there, got some great content to go over with everybody. We'll go through the panel, move to Q&A, and then wrap up here probably in about an hour and a 15, hour and a half.
Great, thank you so much for having me, Alice. So my name is Netta Redder, and I lead hackathons for Facebook. Before this, I was a hardware engineer for many years. And after that, I worked with First Robotics on robotics competitions for kids. I love hackathons, and I'm really, really excited to be here today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Netta. Anthony, you're up.
Thanks, Alice. Hi, everyone. My name is Anthony Middleton. I'm a community manager at Confluent. We are building a fundamental platform for data in motion based on Apache Kafka. I've been at Confluent for a little over a year now. Before that, I was a community manager at a cryptocurrency company named Hedera. And throughout college, I worked with the hackathon organization at the University of Arizona and organized hackathons there as well. And I'm currently in Chicago.
Very nice. Michelle?
Thanks for having me, Ellis, and I'm very excited to be sharing the stage alongside my fellow speakers today. So my name is Michelle Shi, and I work as a project manager, strategy and innovation at Bell. My team creates the customer experience optimization for Bell's business clients, and we actually started a program which really enables internal innovation, and hackathons is really at the center of that. Outside of work, I've also volunteered at some local hackathons in the community in Montreal. So I'm very passionate about hackathons and how it can really foster team collaboration and innovation.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. Brian?
Thanks, Alice. It's just a pleasure to be with so many amazing companies and amazing people here. So thank you. My name is Brian. I'm CTO and one of the co-founders of Airblock Technologies. Our focus is digitizing aviation and aerospace supply chains. And I love hackathons, huge proponent of them. So when I graduated college, I was working at the Harvard Kennedy School, working on digitizing Native Nation case studies on Google's art and culture platform. I got really into technology from that. And I also had an amazing opportunity following that to work for a blockchain venture capital fund called Adesimal. And that was really where the portfolio companies were actually telling me about hackathons. And I didn't know about them until that point. And that's really where I started to write my first lines of code. I kind of fell down the rabbit hole, and it's sort of been history since. So I just really love hackathons, especially virtual hackathons in COVID. Been working on a lot of tools to help keep people safe during the pandemic. So I just know the importance of, specifically with health tech, how hackathons virtually have enabled a lot of innovation and development. So excited to be here and talk more about that.
Awesome. Yeah, to say the least, a lot of cool things have been going on. Lots to talk about today. Anu, you're up.
Hi, Alice. Thanks for having me. My name is Anu Koshi. I'm the Global Head of Diversity and Inclusion at UST. I also lead sales enablement and revenue operations for UST. I'm based in Los Angeles. So I've been running enterprise hackathons for UST for 5 years now. And we've been doing it across our 26 countries. And it's very passionate about entrepreneurship and innovation, and really excited to be here today with all my fellow panelists.
Awesome. Thanks so much. It sounds like you've got your hands full, to say the least. And Kenneth, you're up.
Awesome. Thank you, Alice, for the introduction. My name is Kenneth Huang. I'm the program manager for GRC Labs in MetroStream. MetroStream is a company that we do governance, risk management, and compliance for huge enterprises. Me personally, I started off building my own projects, in more like inventory management system, more for the cannabis tech industry. Ultimately, later on, I moved on to more like GRC status in tech businesses, and I've been helping run hackathons for our company for the last 2 years, and we just onboarded Hacker Earth last year, and I've seen great value that Hacker Earth has provided for us. So I'm really excited to be speaking along with all the speakers today. Thank you, Ellis.
Well, we are excited to have you guys here, to say the absolute least, and there's certainly a ton of experience here on the call with us today. So I'm eager to dive in. So from here, why don't we just start with the round of questions? I think the first one up is one that's going to go to everybody. So we'll just, whoever wants to start first and go from there. But it's become increasingly apparent that hackathons play a fairly crucial and critical role in building a culture of innovation within an organization. Who wants to elaborate in terms of how building out that hackathon or culture of continuous innovation has kind of happened in your own organization? And how have you seen hackathons play into that?
I'm happy to kick us off, Alice. So I think that hack culture has been critical to Facebook from the very beginning. The address is on HackerWay. We have a Hacker Square, but it's not just a tagline. It really helps us innovate. And I think that as the company grows, it only continues to increase the impact of making sure everyone has a voice, and you're able to leverage all of the incredible people that you have and all of the amazing skill sets that they have. And it's a really inclusive way to continue to innovate at any size. So I think that's the reason that Facebook has continued to invest in hackathons, and that the hack culture is such a critical pillar. It's just like nothing is someone else's problem. You have a voice, and you have a way to shape how the product looks and feels and what it should do. And it's a way to be able to really see and hear everyone, even with a company of our scale.
Very nice.
I'd like to follow on that, Netta, just because here at Bell, we actually used Facebook as an example for starting up our hackathon culture here at Bell. And I actually used Facebook as a use case when we pitched our ideas for having hackathons internally. And I think what really caught the eye of our executives is really that way of hackathons to challenge the status quo and sort of break up what we're currently doing right now, and kind of allow space for people to think, to reset and realign. And that way, that's really in those times where real innovation comes to bubble up.
Yeah, great points, Netta
Sure.
and Michelle. I think, even for us, hackathons are indeed a crucial aspect of our innovation repertoire. And what we've seen is it really stimulates the creative and problem-solving juices of the company. And like Netta was saying, our developers, they have a chance to have their voices heard. They can bring in their ideas that they're passionate about. They can take risks without failure. That's an important point. And what we've seen is it's a huge boost in employee engagement and morale, and that kind of pays dividends by itself. And I always tell my folks that hackathons encapsulate the 4 C's that the leading thinker Yuval Noah Harari calls out every time. So it's critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. So it's kind of encapsulates all of it.
Yeah, I know. I actually like to follow up on that. I think besides just the innovation juice that's flowing, I think what Hackathon really brings to the table is solidifying it as an event where it creates bandwidth for project managers and also engineering to actually attack the issue, because there are always ideas of juices flowing around the company. However, they always get buried from emails, like from not enough bandwidth from project managers and engineers. Hackathon makes it into a formal event where they create that bandwidth and a project task, a plan for them to actually bring it up to the end goal. And I think that's really what hackathon has been able to do.
Building off of that, I sort of subscribe to the idea that diamonds are built under pressure, and I think exposing yourself to new technologies, new environments in a really condensed amount of time just constantly drives rapid innovation at scale. And I just, even going back to a couple months ago, at Airblock, we participated in DataStax Astra's holiday hackathon, actually hosted on Hacker Earth, funny enough. And it was a cool opportunity because we got to use new technology that we hadn't really used before. And what was amazing about that was we were actually able to build a pretty cool application that would able to, it was an intergalactic app to basically like Airbnb, but in space, called Space BNB. And that's not really related to what we're doing at Airblock, but it's cool because when you can be creative and dive into that X factor of something that's completely out of scope, it actually can let certain ideas percolate, and then you might be able to say, oh, now I know how to use data or permission in a certain way, or I can run APIs and do this in a serverless way. So it just, you don't know what you don't know. And I love how hackathons, specifically judges and mentors, can guide you into a new development lifecycle that you might not have even been a part of before. So just constantly being innovative. I think hackathons really drive that for a company and as individuals looking to level up.
Nice, yeah. So I agree with what everyone just said here. I agree with the statement overall. Hackathons are events that foster a sense of community. And we as event organizers, we are asking developers to attend our events, and we're expecting to see some unique and creative projects from them. So we as organizers, we have to be unique when planning hackathons as well in order to make sure that developers feel welcome, like no matter what learning stage they're on. We can't just focus on a high level developers. We have to make sure that our challenges and our judging practices are fair and accessible for everyone. And in doing that over time, we can create a nurturing environment for developers to come into communities and feel welcome and succeed over time as well. So overall, like when we see what developers are doing at hackathons, that helps us to be innovative and helps us to help them create cool projects over time.
Very nice. I couldn't agree more. And guys, I'm going to throw us a little curveball real quick. Right? What type of moderator would I be if I didn't? But hackathons have evolved so much in the last 25, 30 years, right? We moved way away from, say, the developer in the hotel lobby with the hoodie on and Mountain Dew banging away in a laptop, to now it's moved to solutions, to multiple different use cases, whether it's building out projects, building out products, a boost to morale, branding, talent engagement, you name it. How have you seen that evolution kind of over the years in your own experience? And how do you see, from an organizational perspective, you view hackathons more often than not? Is it based on a kind of solutions end goal? Is it a branding end goal? Is it a mixture of everything?
So I think it's a combination of all of it, right? So from our perspective, employees across UST's business units, they've been able to find innovative solutions to disrupt the future of retail, healthcare, telecom, banking, through various themes. And we've seen the technology themes evolve as well over the years. So we have, ideas that have come out in AR, VR, MR, AI and ML, blockchain, IoT. So these themes have evolved, and the cool factor, like Brian was pointing out, right? Some of our developers come in for the experience, just for the experience of it, just to meet other people, the networking aspect of it, just to check out the company, right? So there are different nuances, and the different stakeholders that we have, they play different roles. And what I would say is, when you spoke about building products, interestingly, our IoT platform that we currently have at UST, the idea came about in one of our global hackathons, and it was later developed and institutionalized. It's easy to come up with a bright idea and to come up with a prototype, but really making it a product and institutionalizing it is the hard part. So that's what I would say.
I was just going to say, I'd love to build on what you said. I think that that's absolutely true. I think the first step is, it's really difficult to have a conversation around ideas. There are a lot of ideas, but when you actually start to build it and create a prototype, you run into a lot of realities. And then you can have a real conversation when you have a prototype around, like, why should this exist? How would this exist? how much of a lift is this to actually build? And you can kind of really push your ideas so much further once you've developed them in a hackathon. So Marketplace, for example, Facebook Marketplace, that started in a hackathon. That started in actually 6 hackathons. They went through several hackathons. It didn't get buy-in until the timing was right or the idea was tweaked a little bit and the prototype showed what it could be. And the roadmap for that product actually ended up being very close to what the hackathon had. So we try to make hackathons very inclusive and make sure they're absolutely for engineers, but they're also for designers and researchers and PMs and actually every single person across the company, because that's what makes great products and that's also what makes great hackathon projects. So I think it's that skill building, learning, but just like inclusive innovation across everyone, which is a cultural, really important piece that I think all of us would love for our companies to have. Sorry, Michelle, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say that I think it's a wonderful point that you brought up, Ellis, like how hackathons have evolved. And I think, you know, at big tech companies, hackathons are just a word that everyone knows. But at Bell, we really had to do work to demystify what the word hack meant, right? Because as you mentioned, like they still conjure up those images of people, you know, hacking a computer or like cybersecurity type images. And I think, you know, actually, I want to bring up what Kenneth and Brian said, like those are two very good points. Like Kenneth, what you said about bandwidth, giving people the bandwidth to work on something. And Brian, what you said about working under pressure, that time boundness of a hackathon. Those are two key elements that I think are characteristics of hackathons. And then hackathons itself as a whole could be applied to so many different use cases that is beyond just tech. And at Bell, we really want to keep our operations teams in mind as well, because we believe that they are the ones talking to the customers, running the business day to day. So we really want them to get involved in hackathons and make it an inclusive place for people that aren't engineers or developers as well.
And building off of that, Alice, definitely a great question. I totally agree with all of my panelists on this question. I just, even going back to ETH Boston, that was sort of one of my first in-person hackathons, and then now completely virtual with hackathons. Alice, to your question, I kind of noticed, like, at least with ETH Boston and those types of hackathons kind of pre-COVID, there was a lot of ideas of working with a company or a partner, and you're trying to build like a layer 2 solution that implements like X, you know, blockchain or X technology, X solution. But I think now, just in COVID and the pandemic, there's now this idea of we could use like Oracle or AWS or, you know, Google Cloud or some other type of technology, and now build a solution that could help keep people safe. I'm a huge proponent of Chrono Tracker. This was a really, really big open source project that I was a part of at the start of the pandemic. I actually met several colleagues at ETH Boston at a physical hackathon, and then we did this whole virtual hackathon. And it was just amazing to see a product come to life. We ended up getting like 10,000 views on our GitHub repository. We scaled our team from like 3 to 300. And I still kind of find myself applying a lot of those innovation at scale type tactics at Airblock of building and uniting around a team around a common cause. And I think virtually now there's this idea of, you know, you can create a product that now can serve a huge population of people and help keep people safe or help keep people protected or be monitoring symptoms related to something that's kind of scary or concerning. So I know that hackathons can, Netta, like to your point, create an amazing technology, an amazing product and platform that could be used by, you know, millions and millions of people, you know, and or help people like keep, you know, their symptoms tracked through their own like self-reporting you know, symptom trackers. So there's just different ways that hackathons can drive and build innovation. And I think all the panelists here can totally agree that innovation is needed, and that's where hackathons can really play a big role.
Yeah, Brian, going off of that, I absolutely agree. I think the evolution for us in the hackathon is really about connecting all the resources within the company, right? And then ultimately bridging the gap from all different departments, because like working at a mid-sized company, I worked at a startup before, and it was a completely different experience, right? Startups, you can really talk to people instantly, but at a mid-sized company, when you want to bring the big picture of 100,000 feet to everybody, a lot of the times, like there are important departments that get missed, and ultimately, like we have to go back and reattack those issues. However, having a hackathon where everybody have a centralized place to collaborate, to discuss, and everybody's on the same page, ultimately really help us create that really smooth pipeline of putting in things into internal POC, right? And then put it into actual product demo, and then push it into product. And that roadmap with Hackathon really ultimately helped with our workflow ultimately. So that's why I think the evolution of Hackathon really brings in with technology that really helps us speed up the time for us to collaborate and innovate. Oh, Ellis,
That's 2021 for you, right? Everybody's muted all the time. It sounds like we've kind of identified multiple use cases, right? With a underlying experiential theme to ultimately foster communication and innovation, right? Through that, and I'll move to the next question and skip one in the meantime, but we can see that unsiloing teams, communication, collaboration, a boost to morale, right? While simultaneously looking at, say, talent engagement or say internal engagement, whatever it might be. Those are different kind of pieces to this hackathon puzzle, and you can use it in many different ways. So let's talk about hackathons for each specific use case for a minute, particularly segueing for a moment for talent branding. So for talent branding and hackathons, it's been well, how effective, let me rephrase that, or reliable have hackathons been as a way to both engage and identify top talent for your organization? Is that something that each of you or some of you have used hacks for?
I can go first, Alice. Well, I think for our company, we don't really engage us on who's the best talent in the company, because we really value everybody's innovation that's coming in. However, the way we ran our hackathon is by an idea of like a red box and blue sky type of innovation, right? So then we keep with one that you can focus on product. So then there's two parts of innovation. You can focus on product improvements and product innovation, and blue sky would be completely outside the box, a new market, new innovation that comes into it, right? So coming with that, we ultimately have a lot of ideas that actually comes in, but we will ultimately pick out top 10 ideas that will be competing in the POC stage, right? And so then those people technically, like as he said, those will be the top participants that we will be picking, deciding that there are top talents for the next product roadmap that's going to move in from our ideas. So I think that's how we approach towards this problem.
Yeah, I think.
So does anybody use hackathons as a way to engage new talent to the organization, to bring in external talent?
Yeah, we actually do. At UST, we have Decode, which is our college graduate hackathon. And what we've found out is we typically market and brand hackathons through social media, through networking platforms for maximum outreach. But when we do that, it's really creating conversations around your brand and recruitment process. So what you're really telling your prospective employees is much more about your culture and brand than any marketing video or social media campaign can achieve. So, and because they're seeing real results, right? They're seeing hackathons in action, they can experience the brand, they can experience the culture for themselves at the hackathon. When they're at the 24-hour hackathon, when they're speaking to product experts, they're speaking to mentors, they're collaborating with each other. They see the vibe of the company. It's a great marketing tool by itself. So we actually try to focus on that cultural experience that you can create during the hackathon more than anything else. And selfishly for me, it is also a powerful DEI tool. Like Michelle and Netta have been saying, for partner, we have had several partner-led women-only hackathons, and it's been proven to be an effective tool to recruit female tech talent. So it's been a great branding tool for us.
Perfect. We've certainly seen a ton of success with the targeted hackathon in order to kind of move that needle on DEI, either internally or externally, really. Does anybody else have anything they want to follow up?
I think hackathons can also be an opportunity for students to really learn. So as Anu mentioned, they can partner with mentors, but it's also an experience. It's a product building, startup incubator, really fast experience that you can then use as you go out in your interviews and you talk about things outside of your course. work. So it can be a great kind of real life experience. Brian, I know that you said a lot of your experiences started from hackathons. I think that for students who participate, they can personally gain a lot in terms of what they could talk about in future interviews and learning a lot about yourself and what you're potentially interested in terms of the product cycle, for example. So I think it's a win-win for both the companies and the students who participate or the developers.
Awesome icebreaker to say the least, right?
Totally. I was going to say, I totally agree with you. And actually, I was doing a live with Hacker Earth actually, and we actually talked about that of what's the purpose of a hackathon. And I found that at least to me, it's always about learning. It's always about like achieving challenges or something that you didn't think possible before. And that's sort of where like, if you know, it's not about necessarily the winning, it's about the growth. And I think if you're able to tangibly at the end of the hackathon say, I learned X and such skills, they can be implemented in X and such ways, that's a huge success. And I think just from a talent engagement perspective, that's really important for a company because you can attract that type of talent. You're looking for people that are innovators, builders, you know, people that are community based and they like being on teams and overcoming obstacles and achieving goals. So I think that that's hugely important for hackathons. And I know personally, I've benefited a lot from hackathons, just getting into development. And that's actually where I kind of have this like kind of funny story where when I went to ETH Boston, I had known like a little bit HTML, CSS, and like a little bit of JavaScript. And I thought I like knew how to program. And then the mentors actually were telling me about React and TypeScript. And you know, I didn't even know what NPM and Yarn until they started walking me through that. And sometimes you really do need someone to like sit you down and be like, there's a lot for you to learn, but like, here are the things that you need to learn. And then that might be career changing, like it was for me, where I thought that it was insanely cool. I was so amazed with what you could do with a computer. And then that could spur, you know, me to then become someone that's contributing to open source repositories. So it's, you don't really know what's possible, but I like how hackathons level the playing field so anyone can get involved. There's mentors, people that might sit with you for a few hours and help you install Node and all of the technologies that you might need for building a full-scale application, but you don't know what that effect could have on someone. So again, like leveling the playing field, making it, you know, equitable for anyone to get involved in technology. I think that that is hugely important for companies and just building up people, especially coming out of college.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, Brian, and agree with what Nana was saying as well. I started hackathons when I was at the University of Arizona, and I started as an attendee. I first walked in and experienced this like amazing energy that was in the room being at a hackathon and seeing how people were learning outside the classroom and what fun they were having doing it. And then later on, I went on to become one of the organizers for that same hackathon event. And the skills that I learned while being an organizer are the skills that I currently use in my current role. So going to a hackathon set me on the path I'm currently at. So it's definitely is power on both sides of that. So I can definitely agree.
Man, talk about a good segue. So all of you, I'm sure, will have very enthusiastic answers to this one, but what do we have to do to conduct a successful hackathon? What goes into it from beginning to the end to actually mentoring, the roadmap, all that stuff? What goes into that successful hack?
I think for me, like at the core of hackathons, and I'm happy to argue this point, but it's ownership and it's allowing the people to have ownership of these projects and have their ideas be represented. And it's that ownership that brings in the passion and the energy to really bring these ideas to life. And I think one of the critical things about organizing a successful hackathon is having that, you know, bottoms up approach, as well as the top-down approach in terms of support for the hackathon. So people from the ground up, ideas need to come and be generated from the ground up, but it also needs to be at the end of the day aligned with strategic goals and strategic direction so that after the hackathon ends, those ideas actually can build into tangible projects that live within the company and actually impact the company in a tangible way. So for me, I think ownership is definitely at the core of a successful hackathon, and that, you know, bottoms up and top down communication. But I think also it's allowing people to have the ability to shine and kind of own their own development. We've seen a lot of use cases where people who have participated in a hackathon actually understood a little bit more about themselves and what career direction they would want to go to next. So it's a really good opportunity to move people around, think about promotions, and think about where people fit in the organization.
Michelle, I love what you just said there about the ownership. That's so important when planning hackathons and making sure people feel like they can have the empowerment to continue working on their projects after the event and like seeing their goals through. I think that's really awesome. I'm also agreeing with what you said about communication. I work on a small team, and communication is very important for all of us. We definitely try to communicate with each other as much as we can. If, for instance, if someone's out of the office, or a joke that my boss always makes is, in case you get hit by a bus while sitting in your apartment, someone will have like the notes to pick up. So I definitely keep everyone posted on RSVPs, important dates that are happening with the hackathon, who has agreed to help out with staffing, and also keep a very detailed outline of the hackathon. I usually start off, it goes about like 9 pages, sometimes like longer. I think by the time it is over with, it's like 12 pages long. So you definitely build like a pretty solid library of knowledge there while you're planning your events and while you're actually doing the event. So that way you have that to reference to for future events as well. So communication for sure is important.
I completely agree, Anthony. I think something that we've found, I like to start by asking, what would success look like for you? Because we have large global hackathons, we have org-wide ones, we have team ones, we have the external ones. And I think taking a minute to think about like, what are my goals? What would success look like? And really focusing there is really important. I think in terms of like hackathons and what is a hackathon, for us, it's really important to define it as, this is not work. This isn't a sprint. This isn't a place where you spec out some things that you want to do and people will just come do it. Everyone, to Michelle's point, has to be able to build what they want, and they can build whatever they want at our hackathons. So internally, anyone can hack on anything that they would like. But you also need to think, okay, there has to be some buy-in for some of these ideas because no one wants to build for no reason. And so creating that openness and that space for anyone to be able to work on anything gives you the opportunity for skill building, gives you the opportunity to get exposed to a lot of different places, a lot of different people, but making sure that afterwards, some of those ideas can move forward. So there are no winners, but you do have the opportunity to present your idea and galvanize the team and get people's support. So one example of that, I mentioned that Marketplace came from a hackathon. Actually built onto that is a project called Elevate, which reached out to Latinx and Black-owned small businesses and educated them on how to use our ads products. So somebody happened to notice that this was something that wasn't happening and they were passionate about it, and they made a hackathon project, and now it's reached millions of businesses in a matter of two years. In 9 months they reached 3-year goals. So making sure that there's this space for anyone to work on anything, because you don't know what's going to work, but then making sure that afterwards they have a runway to share those ideas and hopefully get further.
Yeah, excellent points, Michelle, Anthony, and Netta. So I think there are, as Michelle said, there's like bottoms up and there's top down. So apart from the tactical aspects, like what are your objectives? What's the agenda? What are the rules? What are the prices? What's the budget? What's the timeline? Those kind of things. I want to highlight a few aspects, really double click on what Netta said, right? What would really make it memorable for the participants? So look at the overarching goals. What kind of message are you trying to convey to the participants? What should be their key brand takeaways? And what is their user journey going to be like, right? What are some of the cool moments for them? And how is the experience from, say, an accessibility standpoint or from a DEI standpoint? So I think, we also have to think about how does it really shine a light on the company culture and craft an ideal user journey that really realizes the impact. So, I think, the rest of the stuff is just planning and execution, in my opinion. And if we can really think about those high level, overarching goals, it will really make a great hackathon.
I absolutely agree with all of my panelists here. Kind of building off of this, having different tracks in a hackathon, I think, is very helpful. So sometimes you'll have people that are very advanced with a certain area of technology. You might have people that are just starting, but kind of when we think about like just in terms of equity and making sure that everyone can sort of have a play in the hackathon, making sure that maybe there's workshops to get people started. If they're really advanced, maybe there's technical workshops by senior architects or senior developers, and they're going through higher level functions and higher level algorithms. There's sort of having both sides of the coin. I think that makes hackathons really valuable for folks, because I think even when you're like just starting out, it can be really overwhelming. I kind of like with my hackathon when I first went to like East Boston, I was like, oh my goodness, there's all this stuff I don't know. Having sort of workshops that were for those beginners to help say like, hey, let's get you started and let's get you plugged into building something, that can be very empowering for someone. And the same wave, like on the same wavelength, if you have someone who's really, really good and then they're able to take their skills to the next level, maybe running some AI with TensorFlow or something that's very, very much like industry standard at scale, that could be very cool. And they might really dive into that specific sector, and you don't know what that could then bring to the table for your company if they've been empowered with this mindset that, oh, I can do this with this. So you never know really the transactional value that can come from exposing people to things, but it's finding a way to get them to the table and help them kind of see what's out there in the world of tech. And communication for sure. That's obviously super, super important.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with all my panelists here, especially Netta pretty much said everything I wanted to say. For me, it's more about the minimal limitations, but at the same time providing that 100,000 feet of direction and scope, right? So then keeping them in that right direction, but allowing that minimal limitations for them to innovate on completely new ideas. Like what I've actually found out from our different two type of ideas for hackathon was that there are a lot of outside the box and completely new market innovation that actually come in that, in the management and leadership team never even thought of, right? And with those ideas coming in, it really gets the whole company thinking on completely new technologies that can be implemented in the product, not just only focusing on the product itself. So I think for me, like the keyword would be the minimal limitations, but at the same time providing an overall 100,000 feet view for scope.
Awesome. Thank you for that, guys. It sounds like organization planning and establishing success metrics before you actually dive into these types of events is fairly critical. How have you seen the kind of setup or the organizational challenges change in light of COVID? Have you seen challenges? And if so, what are they? And if you're looking at setting up that now virtual event, how do we drive success in a virtual world?
I think that what we've seen actually is obviously hackathons in person are a lot of fun, and having that time in the room where you turn right and you turn left and you see people building amazing things and you can ask them questions, it's hard to replicate that virtually. However, virtual events present a real opportunity. We have people working in all different time zones. We've had people working from 30, 40 global offices together on projects. And so there are some real opportunities in a virtual hackathon setting to be able to reach a lot more people and have a lot more different people working together. So I hope that we'll continue to leverage some of those kind of positive aspects while bringing in some of the real life pieces. What we've found that can be really helpful. So hackathons in general, it's about enabling people. So really lowering the bar, the expectations are lower, and also the support is really high. So it's this opportunity to just jump and try something and take a risk. And it's a strategic advantage to have this inclusive innovation happening, similar to what Kenneth was saying. And so virtually what we've done is just created a help desk where people can ask questions at all hours, and we have people manning it all the time, or womaning it. Somebody is watching it all the time and answering questions really, really quickly so that you're unblocking people. Also explaining to people early, like, how can I get involved? So engineers, a lot of times they understand, they can come and build, but how can I, as any other role, why am I important? And how can I get involved to really enable more people to participate? So creating the resources virtually to pull people in and share them so at any time they can, be inspired and also be unblocked, I think has been really helpful for us virtually.
No, I was just going to say that I completely agree with Netta there, because it's the pandemic has really made it a level playing field, right? So it's made it more inclusive. so many people that couldn't participate from around the world are now participating in hackathons. And but there's also the other piece of it where the human interaction and the dialogues, all of that is missing. But I think we can take the best of both the worlds and make use of it, is what I would say.
So yeah, I just wanted to add on with you, Anu, that what you said about leveling the playing field. Like, we actually saw that in our feedback surveys, that some people that were in more remote locations, they had super positive feedback because they, for once in their life, felt like they were on the same page as their colleagues that were in central locations. And also, people that never got to work together before now do have the opportunity to work together. So it's a real engagement opportunity to engage your remote teams and leverage their talent. But also, on the other hand, in terms of mentorship and workshops, you no longer have that physical constraint. So mentors, you can really think about high quality mentors in spite of where they live or where they come from, or all around the world. And you can really leverage that talent to give really high quality workshops and learning experiences to all of the hackathon participants.
I agree with all panelists. When planning events or when kind of going through events like hackathons, one thing that I ran into with issues is attendees not fully understanding the request of that hacking challenge. So I think a good way to get around that is to build out a pretty solid FAQ page for the hackathon, so that way people know, what to expect when going into it, and they can kind of reference back to that. We're dealing with people who are working with people who are all over the globe, and we have to just accommodate to their needs. Some of them may require more hand-holding than others, which is totally fine, which is totally welcomed. We have to make sure that they feel like they can participate in these events as well as our high-level technical experts.
I see technology tools, Anthony, building off of that, I see technology just enhancing virtually. Michelle, you're talking about this too, and you're talking about this, that of course, and Kenneth, we're all, especially with like Slack, with Discord, with Zoom breakout rooms, I've seen a lot of pair programming, like Discord channels, and then you can just jump on a quick call with someone and really talk stuff out, maybe even doing like share screen and show like, oh, this is my code, this is what I'm working on. I think that that's so valuable now, especially, in a pandemic, still being able to get to the table with other people. And then when you're talking about having so many offices globally, being able to work on the same project together, I think technology is just enhancing our ability to build and scale technology together. And I think we're sort of living in that digital transformation era where it's kind of exciting. And I think this is only going to continue moving into the future. So I'm kind of like hopeful. I definitely do miss like in-person events, especially like in-person hackathons, because the energy in East Boston, I mean, that was like my first hackathon, but that was amazing energy in the room and seeing everyone there. But virtually, you can still have a really fun time, and even being able to like take Corona Tracker from 300 to 300 people. We were having like weekly Zoom calls. We sort of had a whole organizational structure. It was very much of like an open source type global project. And that's when like the excitement, everyone will still make time, in and around time zones and around schedules. So I just like how technology is enabling us to continue these types of innovative events without feeling like, oh, this is, not in person, so I can't go. Virtually is actually making even more people be a part of these events. So I think that's a good trend to see.
I'll add on to that too, guys. It's nice to see the technology align with the kind of fundamentals of the hacks, right? With everything going on around open source and open innovation and kind of less guidance and bring us your best kind of product. It seems like there's a lot of alignment there with what the underlying kind of point is for a hackathon. So let's kind of shift gears for a second and talk for a moment about some of the challenges that we might have seen during hacks, which we all know that there are some challenges from time to time. So, and on top of that, just to add, it sounds like it's hard to replicate the energy that we find on site. However, it seems like a lot of the benefits that we're finding from this virtual type of environment outweigh some of the negatives when it's actually all kind of out there. And I think we're all excited to be able to blend virtual and on-site again and tap into that energy. But what challenges do you see executionally while you're conducting these hacks from a high level as a sponsor, let's say?
I can go first. So, so for my experience, one of the hardest challenge that we had was actually tracking judges shortlisting ideas and their votes for winners. So we ultimately ran two sets of judging phase, right? And we shortlisted top 10 ideas from over 100 ideas that actually came in, and these 10 ideas got built into POC for competing in the top 3 spots. So I think before onboarding with a technology like HackerEarth, oh my God, like trying to get all the judges to try to shortlist in Excel sheets and emails was an absolute pain. But after, if you have a centralized system, just like what the last question was talking about, having that communication and collaboration, it really does help solve that pain points where you have to track down every judge's scoring, and then you ultimately have the head of judge that's giving the decision of who moves on and all that kind of stuff. So I think yeah, that was our pain point, and I think that HackerEarth really does a good job in solving those issues.
Kenneth, I appreciate the plug.
Our experience was exactly similar like Kenneth. So we tried manual and partial automation in 2016, all by ourselves, when we did our first ever enterprise hackathon. And the manual processes were so tedious, and the partial automation left so much to be desired, right, in terms of closing the loop on activities. So the last 4 years that we've ran hackathons, we've utilized HackerEarth. And HackerEarth and utilizing HackerEarth and some of the other platforms definitely made it easier for look at registration, so much easier. Tracking progress, you have the dashboard, it's all out there. Managing your submissions, shortlisting submissions and filtering it. And absolutely, like Kenneth said, easy for judges to evaluate submissions. So much easier, right? So for us, HackerEarth really stood out in terms of the user experience, the scalability. We could really seamlessly integrate it to our 26 countries where we did the enterprise hackathon. The support that you guys provided us for our 8-person, the 24-hour hackathon was fabulous too. So I would say rely on a tool. It doesn't make sense for you to do all of it by yourself. You'll just run into challenges if you do that.
I want to continue plugging HackerEarth right now and say that using the HackerEarth team building tool is also really important for us. At previous events, doing them manually, asking our attendees who don't necessarily know each other, they don't even live in the same time zones, asking them to all work together, it's a bit challenging. It can be a bit intimidating for them as well. So with the tools that are on HackerEarth, where you can see the skill sets of fellow registrants, and you can reach out to them about building teams and communicate whether or not you have common interests where you want to work on a project. That's been so helpful in getting people to work together and form teams.
And even going back to the DataStax Azure Hackathon that was on HackerEarth, that was a great opportunity to just have all the information just visually there for your team. You don't have to go and start asking people different questions. It's all just very clearly laid out, and being able to have that, also jumping into Discord, being able to talk to the mentors, people that are the organizers. And I think sort of one of the challenges might be sort of how do you work across time zones, but when someone's asleep, there's another person that's online. So you can really make it work, I think, in a virtual environment. And I think that is a tribute to the organizers of these hackathons, right? I mean, we want to make this a success. So, we'll all find ways to make this a successful event, especially for the attendees, because that's really what it's about, right? I mean, it's enabling people to have the skills to learn, to build cool things. And then, who knows what your attendees will create at the end of the hackathon. So you sort of are encouraged to make it as seamless as possible. And I do like how, especially all the hackathons that are on platforms like HackerEarth, all the organizers are very passionate about bringing that vision to light and just enabling cool technology to be created, or helpful technology, or maybe the next company or two. So there's a lot of possibilities that can come from hackathons. And I think it's just a tribute that we're all kind of we all get it, and we're all making it happen at the end of the day.
For sure. I just also want to agree that with the panelists that I think the two challenges for me, or my experience, were team formation and getting judges to give feedback to the teams. And I think actually in person, when we had in-person hackathons, it was harder, even harder for the judges to give feedback because they were scribbling on a notepad, pen and paper, the feedback. And sometimes, yeah, that didn't go through to the teams at the end of the day. And feedback is one of the really key components of learning and improving. And it's such a critical component of a successful hackathon. And so with Hacker Earth, everything is kind of centralized, the team formation, the judging, and the feedback. Because it's virtual, it's just sent automatically to the teams. And above that as well, I think what it does is it legitimizes the virtual hackathon in a way. You kind of have this package with a bow on top, and like you can find everything there. Whereas, you know, in the past with virtual hackathons, we've been doing it with kind of like a mosaic of all these different things. But when you have a centralized platform, it really helps to legitimize the event.
Well, guys, I must say thank you so much for taking the words out of my mouth. But it sounds like it's a lot of manual processes, right? And in this virtual age, which, forgive me, my dogs are barking right now in the background, but you can't really duct tape a bunch of systems together and hope for the best and expect a truly successful event, right? So that is a great part about Hacker Earth, but I'm not going to plug myself shamelessly now. So let's talk for a second about how to get buy-in from a management perspective or a leadership perspective to actually get these things going. It seems like there is, because of the verbiage, right, in many cases, and because of the lack of familiarity in some non-tech or less than tech verticals, right, I would venture to bet that those who've experienced hacks have challenges selling that to leadership. Any pointers?
I can comment because it was something that I had. Actually, my role in, you know, making this hackathon happen was, you know, convincing leadership that this was a good idea. And I mentioned, Netta, that I used Facebook as an example. But before that, actually, how it started was that the hackathons that I was volunteering and part of in the community, they needed a sponsor. So naturally, I asked Bell to sponsor those hackathons, and Bell provided mentors to the hackathons that were mostly students and young professionals in Montreal. And to my surprise, it was actually the first time a lot of our employees at Bell have experienced a hackathon and really got to see, you know, what it is and the energy and participate in it as a mentor. And, you know, even as a mentor, it feels really good to give back and give your experience and help out these teams. So that was the first step, is just getting kind of leadership and or just anyone in your company exposed to what a hackathon is. And then the next step was to approach leadership. And again, like what I had done was I used that bottoms up and top down approach. So I had like a list of people who were interested, and I had their kind of like signature, I guess, to see that people were interested in it. And then, you know, I dug up some examples of other companies that were also doing hackathons. And yeah, really just pitched the benefits of it. And I think that when they see the benefits of it, it's kind of a no-brainer. You know, it's definitely worth having, if at all. If it doesn't have any impact on the company in terms of tangible projects, at least it's that learning and development, and it's that people component. So I think at the baseline, there's essentially no loss there.
I completely agree with you, Michelle. I agree with so many of the points that you made there. So I think even Facebook, which is a very large company that is known for hackathons and for its hack culture, you still have to kind of fight some of these assumptions that Alice, you brought up at the beginning, that hackathons are, you know, a group of dudes in hoodies sitting on a computer. They're not. They're for everyone. And it's really important that everyone is given the space. So I think it's a combination of making sure that you have leadership talking about it from the highest levels about why this is an important use of time. And then also at like the management level, making sure that you're giving your employees the time. So what are you hacking on at this hackathon? Are you canceling meetings to make sure that people have that time and that space to feel like it's okay to participate? So people feeling like it's impactful. And I think the other piece of it is looking at the actual impact. So tracking like, Are people learning new skills? Are they meeting new people? Are they able to switch roles? Are we able to ship products? So making sure that you're speaking the language, whatever the incentive or the definition of impact is to whoever you need to get buy-in from, making sure that you're speaking that language and creating this very inclusive place where people can innovate, because ultimately it's strategic. It's really good for your bottom line. If people are happy, if you have the opportunity to leverage your incredible workforce to create these great ideas that you could implement at some point in the future, you know, that's a great investment. If it means people taking 2 or 3 days a couple times a year to just get to think and work. So I think you want them to be innovative all the time, and this is a way to create that space and ingrain that into your culture.
Michelle and Netta, I totally agree with you. I think even to the person, you might meet mentors at a hackathon, and they might be lifelong mentors for your employees or your teams. And as they advance and they level up, they'll also help your employees and your teams level up. So, those are, friends, colleagues, mentors, whatever you want to call it. They might be helping your members continue to evolve and grow and build their skills up. So again, it's sort of, you don't know necessarily what's going to come from it, of like X, Y, and Z will be achieved from the hackathon, but there's always sort of those, intangibles where, X person meets X person, this person might walk them through something, and then that person might be able to pitch, this other solution, this microservice to your team that could then evolve the platform, that could evolve the product, that could create a whole new product. So again, it's sort of building community and getting your company out there. You don't know like what that could lead to with getting, your team out there. And especially with having, a really big, workforce, think of what you could build, like all the good that you can provide to a solution, to an industry vertical, to a specific type of solution. It's sort of the world's your oyster, I think is the phrase, but like, you never know what is sort of that untapped potential that's locked within your teams, and being able to break out that creativity could really create something special.
Yeah, I agree with all of my panelists here. And just like Michelle did, the first time I ever did an enterprise hackathon, I had to create a business case for my management and leadership. And just like she did, I shared success stories from companies that have really employed hackathon as a brand building and recruitment strategy. And the other thing that I kind of showcased is how does it really establish innovation as a value for your organization? And to Brian's point, what are the intangibles, right? Those things actually catch the executive's attention most times. And the other thing that you could also do is you can cite the ROI for your recruitment activities. So studies say that the cost of a hackathon hire is 4 times lesser than that of a conventional hire. So things and metrics like that actually catch the attention of execs, and that's how we build a case.
All comes down to bottom line, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I completely agree with all my panelists, especially Michelle, completely about giving the example from other companies, because that's actually how I approached it to our CIO. And I was pretty lucky because our chief innovation officer, he himself, right, like was very buy-in. So just like what Netta said, you need that high level of the chief executive level to really buy in and blast that email out so everybody are getting engaged, are getting excited. And the other thing is maybe provide that scope and description, right, that fits your company roadmaps, like for your fiscal year 2020 or 2022 or something like that. But ultimately, that kind of scope will give a major direction for the executive to see what are the values and the type of ideas that will ultimately come out of this hackathon, and what it can really bring to our product roadmap and value into the future for our customers. So the way of, like, this is the way how I would actually ultimately push hackathon to our management and get it running.
I just want to add one piece, Kenneth, you made me think of something, just like a challenge to all of the executives out there. So from our global hackathons that we have internally, after every single one, we have Shrep, our CTO, we have Ime Archibong, one of our VPs. We have several VPs who come into a room, and when it was in person, would meet with several teams in person and listen to their pitches. And now that it's virtual, they meet with several teams and listen to their pitches every single time. That's several executives 3 times a year taking time out of their schedule to meet with the teams and listen and give feedback and provide connections. So it's like a real, this is important. Innovation is important. Hackathons are important to us. All of those people in a single room kind of focusing only on that. So, you know, actions and words.
Absolutely, the people aspects and the talent aspects moving forward. I agree. I agree absolutely, Nita.
Awesome. Guys, it sounds like we've really covered some ground, and it sounds like we've seen this real evolution from, like we talked about in the mid 90s, that all fun stuff, to now it's really a practice that needs to be adopted on an organizational level, both top down and bottom up. And it needs to be fully adopted as a way to really move that needle on DEI or whatever types of initiatives you might have internally to try and really actually level that playing field and not just say that you do, right? So last question for the panel here before we move into the little Q&A session from the attendees. What advice would you give to somebody who's getting ready to throw their first hackathon? What are some key do's or don'ts from your experience that they should maybe keep in mind before launching?
I'll start off by saying give yourself time to rest. There's definitely no need for you to stay awake throughout the entire weekend hackathon. Give yourself a break and rely on your team for that. Reach out to your team members, making sure they're aware of what's going on. Like I said earlier, making those long documents, they are very beneficial to pre and like during and post event planning. And also say, don't be afraid to think outside the box when planning and organizing a hackathon. For most of us, we're planning events for attendees who don't look like us. They may not share our same educational background. They may not live in the same time zone, speak the same language as us. But we have to lead with empathy towards our attendees in order to make sure they feel welcomed and they feel like comfortable attending our hackathons.
Building off of that, Anthony, I totally agree about accessibility, specifically with documentation. If there are certain technologies that you want to be using, definitely make sure that that's translated into as many languages as feasible as possible that you can. Because again, like the more languages that you're able to have your instructions in and guidelines in, the more people that can contribute. And especially thinking in terms of time zones, the more people that can be available in and around maybe sort of conflicting time zones as much as possible. Again, that increases accessibility. So, you know, when you think about like a hackathon, it's a community event, right? It's not just we're doing this event and we have to do it, right? You're building community and you're building and inspiring people about what you can do with a certain set of skills or a certain programming language or a certain technology stack. So when you think about that, it's all about how can I make this as accessible as much as possible for the most amount of people, and kind of having that frame of mind, I think is powerful and empowering for any teams, because executives, right, even at the top, right, they want to be making their company as accessible as possible in the market. So thinking about how to make your hackathon and your event, you don't know who you might bring in, and they might be really about your company and actually might check out the careers page, right? You don't know if that might work. That person might connect with a mentor who is a senior dev on some project. They start talking and then they go, oh, I didn't know that you have this at this company. I really want to be a part of that. And then that might be the best hire that you made in the past like 5 years or something like that. So again, you never know what can happen from the hackathon, but you'll never know that unless you make it as accessible as possible. So Anthony, just to your point, I think being accessibility focused is crucial.
100%, Brian, I'd love to build on that. I really, really think that the more you can also communicate to the people you hope to recruit. So it's nice to say this hackathon is for everyone, but if you don't talk about it in the spaces where you might reach those people, you know, that is a focus. And then also creating the resources and the support. So setting up that like culture, the foundation, like what is it that you're hoping to achieve, and making that space. So it's like, I'm telling you about this. I'm telling you how you specifically with your skills, why are you important? Why do I want you to participate? And then creating that space for people to go ahead and do that, but supporting them the whole way. Because if they don't understand how they can participate in a hackathon and they don't understand why their skills are important, it can feel really intimidating. So, you know, just doubling down on both Anthony and Brian around making sure it's a very inclusive space to innovate, because great ideas come from anywhere, and they come from a lot of different people and different lived experiences. And the more we can bring those people in, I think the better products we're ultimately going to see.
Just adding up on your point, Netta, I think diversity is a huge piece. And for us, we've experimented with teams that were self-formed, as well as teams that had more of a guideline on diversity. And I mean diversity not just by age and gender, but by seniority, by type of role. I think all of those aspects are super important when it comes to creating teams. And sometimes when teams form themselves, they don't often know what's best for them in the teamwork itself. So diversity is definitely a top do. Another one is like be creative and how you organize the hackathon, like surprise your hackathon participants, you know, and especially leveraging this virtual environment to think of new ways to surprise them. So, you know, obviously in person, a lot of the perks and goodies that you give participants are, you know, t-shirts and pens and things that, you know, are consumable and are great, but how can we use this virtual environment to our advantage? And for us, we gave people a voucher, a donation voucher, because we have a giving tool at our company, and they were able to donate money to a charity of their choice. And a lot of our participants really loved that idea because it's easy for us to implement, but also reminded them about the importance of giving back. Another, you know, perk that we gave was really just partnering up with delivery apps and giving them a voucher to be able to deliver food at home. So, you know, we scrapped the t-shirts and notebooks and things to give them, you know, virtually enabled perks. And then another tip I would just like to finish off with is be extremely detail oriented. You know, as organizers, we always have to think 10 steps ahead, and it's better to over plan than to under plan because, you know, there's just so much room for error when it comes to live events. And, you know, having Hacker Earth is also definitely a bonus in terms of helping us have the tools to be able to enable that planning.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of you. So again, you know, e-perks, right? E-perks and giving back to the community. Ultimately, a hackathon is an innovation, technology innovation, and people coming together to make the world a better place. So I think it's more about building that community, building the networking, and always remembering that innovation is a marathon and not a sprint. So like I said, it's always easy to come up with ideas, but how do you really build products out of it, right? Think about the larger journey. Think about how can you have, so in our company, we have programs like UST Garage Ventures, which is a product incubation program, which is tied to a hackathon. So the top ideas go through it and we take these products to market. So they can really develop and get to their full potential. And again, don't try to do it alone. Try to leverage best practices from consultants and platform products like Hacker, like my panelists were saying. It'll really help accelerate the implementation of hackathons. And you can also learn from others, right? It's mostly crowdsourced. So if you have a global leaderboard, question board, you might, an employee in Poland might have the same question as an employee in China, right? So if somebody is posting a question that you have and it's out there on the question board, somebody else having the same question is answered for them. So make use of technology, make use of ways to do it, set up the mentor ecosystem, and always listen to your audience. To Netta's point, cater the program to the unique needs of your organization and the participants. It's very, very important, right? So knowing the performance zones, knowing the blind spots, and always remembering that one size doesn't fit all. So you've got to customize, make it personalized, and that it'll give a great hackathon experience.
Absolutely, Anu. I completely agree. So all my panelists, they already give a very wide range and actually on the best of do's. So I'll just kind of conclude on my own. So absolutely be welcoming, continuous support and communication, empowering the participants, and detailed organizations, right? And just as Anu said, there is not, like if this is your first time running hackathon, there is not an absolute right way to run or set up a hackathon. Best is to just be creative, innovative, and adapting towards your audience that are coming in, right? And then just go ahead and run it, because you will find out the ideas that come in will surprise you more than not.
Awesome, guys. This has been a really nice session going over the questions that have been structured so far. I think it's been super valuable, to say the absolute least. So let's move over to the Q&A side here for a minute before we wrap up in about 15 minutes. So it looks like a lot of these questions, some of them have been answered throughout the panel. Some have been already assigned. So Netta, let's start with you. Has there been any challenges for any of you from an internal stakeholders at your company to make time for the hackathons?
Yeah, I think, we're always running against so many priorities. There are always so many things that you need to do. And there's always a lot of pressure, I think, for all of us in terms of, things we could be doing, how we could be productive. There are already so many tops-down initiatives, for example, or mid-level initiatives that are already happening. So why do I need a hackathon? Why do I need more ideas? I know what I want to do. I think you can kind of get into that. Or, my team is very busy. We have a lot of priorities already. We have a lot of innovation that we're doing ourselves. These are some of the things that you might hear. But creating this space, I think also it re-energizes people. It refills them. It creates this place where they're always looking around and thinking, how can I make this better? Is it building an internal tool that might serve something I'm doing, change it, make it more efficient or better? It just continues to reinforce this idea that nothing is someone else's problem. You are empowered to fix things, to make things better. And that can be something like an internal tool that impacts your specific workflow, or it can be something huge like safety check. Whatever you encounter in your life, you will say, oh, I'm going to take that to a hackathon and I'm going to show this and I'm going to make this. And creating that space for those ideas makes people feel heard. And I think it makes people want to innovate because there's a space and there's a place. You're creating that innovative culture. You're just sewing it in. And that's why you create that space. And if you think about it in terms of days and you say, okay, I have X number of hackathons a year and they're each this many days. Are those small number of days ultimately really going to make it such a big difference in your bottom line or in your P0 kind of tasks? Probably not. You can probably create that space and ultimately get so many more rewards in terms of connections and skill building and actual products. This is a strategic advantage. This, innovation, and especially inclusive innovation, is critical and important, I think, and it makes a space where people want to work and innovate. So I think, you definitely see it sometimes. It's hard when you're kind of deep inside the weeds, really busy, to think about why this is a good investment. And the more you can talk about why it's a good investment for any company, big or small, I think, just do it. Organize one. They're easy, they're scrappy, they're fun. And who knows what you'll learn. Like Kenneth said, you don't know what people are going to come up with.
So you hear that, guys? Take the jump. Put on that event.
Absolutely. Netta, building off of that, I think, again, you don't really know what you're going to create until the end of the hackathon, right? And I think that can be really empowering for teams, especially if you have multiple employees that maybe haven't worked together before, and now they're the team that's building this product or this platform or this solution. That can be really empowering to then at the end of it say, wow, I didn't even know that we could do this, and look what we did. And that can really build really, really strong team chemistry and cohesion. I know just at Airblock, a lot of where we sort of build and innovate within our team, we just shipped this app, and it was actually very empowering for us to be able to like use some new programming languages, like use some new technology, and then look at that and be like, wow, like look at what we did. And that was sort of within a sprint. So you never really know what you can do until you end up delivering it. And again, it's just building team chemistry, team camaraderie. It can be very, very, very good on the EQ side for your team, and kind of really just breaking down barriers and having people, meet and discuss and collaborate together. There's something that's very empowering about that within a team. So hackathons definitely should always have their place at any company, but especially tech companies, because that's the most applicable for sure.
And I would love to call out one example. Facebook was a part of the global Build for COVID-19 hackathon last year in March. And it turns out that Brian was one of the participants and built a Corona tracker app, which has then continued to move forward. So it's amazing. It's amazing what happens when you give people the space and the resources and support, it's incredible what people will build.
The mentors from that hackathon were so helpful. Even just being able to have a Slack channel that you can just go back and ping people, connect with people on LinkedIn. I still talk to colleagues from hackathons, and again, like you might be working on a project, you might collaborate, you might partner between companies. So Netta, just like you never really know like those partnerships that can come across, but being able to make stuff that can help people during a very scary time like the pandemic, that's what is enabled by a company like Facebook and all the other partners that are a part of these hackathons. So again, you don't really know the possibilities until you just start. So Ellis, I mean, that was sort of your point too, right? Like you just have to start and you just have to launch it. So I definitely think that there's so many reasons to start, but it's really just getting that one person to be like, I'm going to make it happen, and then build a team around it as well.
First step's always the hardest, right? So guys, from here, let's do one more question, and then we'll wrap up with a little summary, and I'll shamelessly plug Hacker at that point. So question here is, during a hackathon, there's always a question of what problem statements should participants work on. There's strategies like bring your own problem, predefined problem banks, or having some type of ideathon to then move through to a solution phase. What have you seen work best in an enterprise setting?
I can comment because I think that is definitely something that we struggled with. Like we wanted ideas to be in line with what the executives, envisioned or the strategic visions, but we also wanted to give, space for people to come up with ideas that they really were passionate about. And so we were really struggling with that kind of double-edged sword. And I think what helped with us is like before the hackathon, we have like a company-wide conference, which really we bring in speakers, we bring in guest panelists, and we talk about from a very high level, what are the different issues or what are the different challenges and opportunities that we face in the company today. And I think that conference really inspires and provokes ideas without explicitly saying, this is what you need to work on. And that's just one way that's really helped us in finding the balance between really narrow and too wide of a scope for hackathon problem statements.
Yeah, and to Michelle's point, we have it flipped. So our Enterprise Hackathon is a pre-event to our developer conference, which is D3. So we run Code Pursue, which is our hackathon, months in advance to our developer conference. But we share the exact same approach. So we decide on a theme for the year. So one of the years it was interfaces. The year before it was innovation, digital transformation. So we established a broad team for the pre-events, the hackathons, as well as the broader, the conference. But eventually, to Alice's point, we run Ideathon, and we give broad teams and broad technology teams as well. So, but we give, we leave it up to the participants to pick the idea. So we run an ideathon at the beginning, we shortlist ideas, and the shortlisted ideas actually move on to the hackathon. So I think that's how we have approached it.
Yeah, I'd like to chip in just exactly what Michelle and Nu said. So I said earlier, right? Like giving that 100,000 feet, that's ultimately from the executive to give them that overall scope and directions, such as your company product pillars, your roadmap goals. But you guys can also just, think of ideas like what we did. Our hackathon ran on one for Redbox that focuses on product roadmap that's very aligned with our product, right? So people who wants to improve our product in any way, they can submit a Redbox idea, right? And then if they're completely a new market idea, something that's outside the box, you submit a blue box idea. So you can have both of the panels coming in for you, that people can have the freedom to innovate on whatever idea they want to work on. While at the same time, you also have a huge list of ideas that aligns with your product roadmaps. So I think that's a good way to ultimately bring in both sides of the best world.
Kenneth, I really like that idea.
Sorry, Brian.
Thank you.
Wouldn't be a Zoom panel if we didn't talk over each other. Sorry about that. I'll just say really fast. I think that we do something similar where we create sponsored areas where people who are really familiar with the problem space can outline some of their current challenges and give a few buckets and then resources that people can use if they want to innovate in that space, while also creating the space for people to work on anything they want. And then similar to an Ideathon, we run a session called Hacky Hour, where people can come and pitch their ideas and try to galvanize and recruit other people to come in and join their team. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, that's a very innovative way. I really like that, Nita. Yeah, I think I'll steal that idea for our next one too.
Kenneth and Netta, I love the direction that you provide for those types of hackathons. I think it can sort of be overwhelming if you just say, oh, build with this technology. But if you can ground it in something like the United Nations Sustainable Goals, I see a lot of hackathons aligning around, one of the, SDGs. But even in a sense, like if there's a certain sector like fintech, but to enable X and Y, or IoT to connect X and such devices. I mean, decentralized applications to accomplish data security or data privacy. Giving sort of a lens and a focus is very, very important. And I think even still, like my sort of recent hackathon background has been in the COVID space, but health tech has so many different applications, right? It can be tracking COVID cases. It can be symptom tracking. It can even be predictive. I was working on a project and we were trying to predict COVID cases over weeks and months. So, you can even bring in AI and that can be enabling some sort of other things. So I think giving people sort of, multiple opportunities, but having it based in a focus is very helpful, because if you just go at technology, it can be very overwhelming, and sometimes that can be hard for people to break into that space. But if it's just sort of like there's 5 different areas and experiment, and here's some examples, even bringing in keynote speakers, people that have built technology in those lenses, that's crucial and that's helpful to kind of get people inspired, but also show what's possible and what other people have done.
Awesome. And that is a perfect segue, because it sounds like focus, organization, to really harness that power of open diversity, inclusion, and innovation. It's something that's critical to really get as much from that hackathon, whether it's tangible or intangible, as possible. So one of the ways that enterprises do that best is using Hacker Earth. So just a quick overview of Hacker Earth and what we do. We've at this point actually put on closer to about 6,000 events, both virtual and on site. We've done 30,000 plus coding challenges and had over 7,000 prototypes built on the platform. We offer hackathons as a fully curated managed service from beginning to end, using our Hacker Earth Sprint dashboard and platform, which basically does all the heavy lifting and make sure that you're, again, not duct taping systems together and just hoping for the best. Now, if you're looking externally, we are one of the larger software developer and computer science kind of communities that are out there that you may or may not have ever heard of. We have over 5.5 million devs at this point. They are fully globally dispersed in over 133 countries. And when it comes to actually managing the hackathon, as you've heard from some of the panelists today, we really do all the heavy lifting, not our first rodeo. And we would love to be able to not only partner with, but be part of the journey for anybody that's looking at using hacks as a way to move the needle on DEI, on innovation, any number of different ways. So guys, we got about 1 minute left. I just want to say thank you to all of the panelists. You guys have been absolutely awesome. And thank you to all the attendees. There's going to be a survey that's going to be sent out. It's going to ask you just for a little bit of feedback. And yeah, from here, guys, just again, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon, and hope that everybody gets out there, has an awesome, awesome weekend. And in the meantime, don't work too hard.